Hey guys, this is Corey D. Silverstein from myadultattorney.com. Please check out my website, myadultattorney.com. Check out my new subscription platform for performers called Adult.Law. Of course, follow me on Twitter, social media, either My Adult Attorney or Corey D. Silverstein. And don't be a stranger. Thanks so much. Adult.Law is actually a project that came out of a need, actually, that performers have been asking about. For a long time, adult performers have been saying that they didn't have the same access to legal because of higher retainers and the complexities involved in hiring a lawyer to begin with. And so they kept telling me that listen, they're like, Corey, what the industry really needs is they need a solution that will offer us legal assistance, that will give us access to educational tools and access to you at more affordable prices without crazy retainers. And so I listened and I listened. And then when COVID hit, like many people, I saw myself with a tremendous amount of downtime. And so I started just talking more and more with performers and asking them questions. And I built Adult.Law completely based off of performers and small business operators and them asking me, here's what we want to hear. And so it was very much built off of what their requests were.
Where do you see Adult.Law going coming up? I mean, you just started and
Adult.Law is something that I firmly believe in it. We are shooting new content every week. We're launching new content every week. What the real goal of it is to be an educational source. The purpose of Adult.Law is so that we can get legal information to people who frankly need it the most, but might not have the budget of a big company like right. One of the big boys. And so what I intend on doing with Adult.Law is I'm going to continue to make videos. I'm going to continue to write articles, and I'm going to continue to do as much as I can to help a sector of the industry that needed help and frankly was oftentimes more ignored than some of the other sectors. Only the future will hold. I mean, Adult.Law will either live or fail completely based on how many subscribers we get, but I intend on continuing to make the content because I love it. I love this industry. I love the people in it. And so, I think the future is huge for it. I think it's going to be absolutely incredible. And all I can do is implore people to sign up. We built the package. We built the platform so that there's various different packages. You might just want access to the videos. You might just want the educational articles. We have that. If you want to get an hour with me once a month to go through your business and talk about different things you're having, we have a plan for that. If you want to buy a couple hours of my time, you can. If later on you need me for more stuff and you're a member, you get discounted legal rates. So we try to make it as financially attainable to someone who needs it, while at the same time we're giving them the advice and the education that they truly and desperately need.
Do you have an email or way people can contact you if they want to?
I do. Anyone can reach out to me at Corey@silversteinlegal.com. I also have a contact page on Adult.Law. I'm also available on Twitter and every other social media platform as My Adult Attorney. And I always welcome feedback. I love it. Even if there's people out there that want me to make a video about a certain topic, we do it. All you got to do is send me an email. If you want to send me an email and tell me that you didn't like my glasses on a particular day or didn't like the way my hair was made or something like that, it's no problem. I can take it too.
The one basic question, is there a common issue that performers ask you about?
Oh, right now, I mean, right now, the biggest thing going on is performers are insanely concerned about their personal safety. They want to create entities. They want to take certain measures to be able to protect themselves against what's quite candidly a lot of people out there that have bad intentions. These performers are being doxxed. They have issues with regard to being fearful that someone is going to find them. And in some cases, it's already happened. And so they're coming to me. We've been dealing a lot more with this since the creation of Adult.Law. We've been going after through cease and desist letters and legal notices to these stalkers, basically telling them, hey, your party's over and we're coming for you now. And luckily, it's incredible how cowardly a lot of these cyber stalkers can be and how quickly they disappear once someone with a little bit more authority pops into the picture.
Is there one thing you see in adult cases and stuff that just either makes you laugh or makes you shake your head because it just happens over and over and over again?
Lack of paperwork. The lack of paperwork in this industry is unlike anything I've seen in any profession. I've never seen a business that has so many deals that are based on handshake. And given the fact that you're dealing in such a high risk environment, I find it to be just incredible that despite all the horror stories, still to this day, there are shoots going on as you and me are doing this interview right now with people that don't have paperwork. And that is just, it mind boggles me. Absolutely just boggles the mind.
Legally, how much can be used in court as far as what someone posts on Twitter or Facebook? Does that hold any merit?
It does a lot now. I mean, times have changed dramatically from where we were 15 years ago, which is why I always tell performers and other people that if they're having problems on social media, that in addition to blocking the person that's causing the trouble, in addition to notifying the platform, that the first thing they should be doing is taking timestamped screenshots. Timestamped screenshots is majorly key. But besides that, all of these social media platforms, when you click delete, believe it or not, the information is still there and they still have it. And through the power of subpoenas and such, we always can go back and potentially get things that have gone missing. But rule number one for people that are having problems online is screen cap and date stamp everything.
And just in general on social media, when is a person considered to be crossing the line? If I say something bad about you, if I post a picture, where is the legal definition of like what's, I guess, defamation?
Well, it depends. I mean, look, ultimately, you have to remember that, defamation is a specific issue. Defamation means that you're saying something about something to more than one party that isn't true about the other party. Defamation is a whole different issue. The bigger issues and more common issues that we see are people that are taking a performer's image, creating bullshit accounts for them. And then, of course, we have the people that are outright threatening them, saying, hey, if you don't do this, this, and this, I'm going to ruin you, or I'm going to send this message wherever. And that has become a very common feature. As far as I'm concerned, the line is crossed the second you have someone who engages in unwanted communication. If someone says, I don't want to talk to you, go away, and they continue to persist, as far as I'm concerned, that's the line. I always encourage people to block, but oftentimes it's not enough. And you have to take it a step further. It might be something that you have to go get a restraining order in your local court. It might be so far as we might even have to institute a civil legal action to get it to stop. And in other cases, the action is criminal. We've seen harassment and threats of criminal violence, threats of personal data exposure rise to criminal levels and result in prosecution.
Social media in general, to me, is more successful based on personality than it is in case of an adult performer, a sex scene. Mm-hmm. Do you think sometimes performers or people give people the wrong impression too much because they're trying to get a customer?
Well, the times have changed. So let's go back historically to what the adult entertainment industry was. If you look back historically, adult entertainment was a company hired 2 people or more to shoot them engaging in some sexual act, which then was distributed online via, or via DVD or VHS back in the day, if you're old enough to remember VHS. But what ultimately happened is as the internet evolved and social media was created where you were able to communicate with your favorite model, and it was no longer just watching them, but you could communicate with them, the whole business changed, everything changed. And so I don't think that a performer, obviously any human being can go too far. Any human being,
right,
can say something to another human being or promise something that's just ridiculous. Like, send me X amount of dollars and I'm going to marry you, or, whatever craziness, you can think of. But ultimately, for people need to understand that adult entertainers are adult entertainers. That is what they are. That is their job. It's no different than if someone's a banker, they are a banker. And people seem to forget that. And so, for the individuals out there that, are talking to adult entertainers and are, thinking that they're going to find love or thinking that somehow they're going to be able to say something, I wouldn't really put that on the model. I would put that on the expectations of the consumer, and the consumer having an unrealistic expectation of what you can actually purchase from a content provider.
Would you agree, disagree? Consumers in generally tend to believe adult material is more real than saying watching Rambo kill 50 people and you know it's fake.
Oh,
But if you see a
absolutely.
girl do a gangbang,
Yep. Because we're talking about sex, and when you start talking about sex and sexuality and human contact, it's different than, you used Rambo as an example of a guy with a big machine gun blowing up a whole
right?
bunch of people. And what happens is the consumer wants to be in the fantasy. The whole point is for the consumer to be taken away from whatever life they're in at that moment
Right.
and enjoy the entertainment and be taken away to fantasy land. Unfortunately, or not unfortunately, but fortunately for the most part, consumers are very good people, and they buy their entertainment, and it's not a problem. But unfortunately, all it takes is, the one or two bad apples, and right away, that just brings down the whole thing, because their conduct is so over the top that people just focus on that bad conduct, and you don't focus on the 98 other people in the room that are behaving just fine.
Has there ever been a legal precedent or anything, and I hope I'm saying that right, I'm not good with legal terms, so bear with me, where a person went to court and basically said, I saw this girl get raped in an adult scene, which was totally legit, so I just thought it was cool to go ahead and rape a girl?
I think that over time, I've heard of different defense attorneys take positions that their client was somehow damaged as a result of years of being addicted or watching pornography, and they've brought in various different sociologists and psychologists to come in and testify to the fact that the person was an addicted uh, pornography user, and that's actually what caused them to do the crime. I've been in this particular industry as a lawyer for 15 years, but I was in the industry even longer than that. So I've been around for 17 years, and that very notion to me is ridiculous. Yes, there are people that have substantial psychological issues, and yes, a lot of those people are in the criminal justice system. But to, try to justify or defend an individual who may have raped or assaulted or battered against something to another person and blame it on potentially what they've seen in pornography is I mean, to me, it's absurd. I mean, it really it goes back to some of the crazy arguments that we saw in I believe it was the late 80s and early 90s, in the violent video games, where, we saw that parents were, when their kids would go off and do something ridiculous, they'd say, oh, well, he only did that because he saw it in a video game. I was like, well, pretty huge difference between tapping a bunch of buttons on a control and being in front of a video screen than actually picking up a gun, going and shooting, a lot of people. So I don't think that's a argument that frankly holds weight, and I think it's silly. I think it's an argument that someone raises who isn't in the industry. And one of the points that I've always tried to make is that you don't understand the people in this business until you've been in this business. Contrary to public opinion, this is actually a very sophisticated, organized industry filled up with many just incredible, imaginative, wonderful entrepreneurs and wonderful people. As much as the general public wants to make the adult industry look like a dirty mattress in the middle of a room with a bunch of heroin needles lying out, that is not what this business is. And it's unfortunate, but and as as someone who's been, you've done other interviews and stuff, that no matter how much you try to talk common sense into someone and just talk some general sense into someone, they're going to be stuck in their own little views of whatever someone told them or whatever they think something is, when that really isn't the reality.
Do you believe in today's society that people, you just kind of touched on it, but will people tend to believe more of what they see than what's legal fact, just as a society in general?
Well, it's no different than headline news. The problem with society right now is that people, if you notice, every news network, it's all about the headlines. No one gives a shit what's in the story anymore. All they do is they quickly read the headline and then move on to the next headline. And that's sad. That's unfortunate, because what's happened is that the news networks, as opposed to responsibly doing something about that, they feed into it. And so now what the name in the game is you got to have the most extreme, the most bolded, the most capitalized, headline out there. I mean, have you noticed now that, when I was a kid growing up and something big happened, they'd interrupt TV, and you'd have this big thing come across the across the breaking news, and we interrupt this program to bring you whatever. Nowadays, everything is breaking news. It could be, it could be like, NASA discovers new species of ant, and they'll, breaking news, and because it's all about sucking the person in, getting their attention, and whether they stay there or whether they go somewhere else on the website or watch something else on the news network, that's what it's all about. And so, the news networks are well aware that the tendency of human beings now we are a headline society. And the gross majority of people will read headlines and then move on to the next headline versus reading an entire story or all the facts.
In your experience as a lawyer, sex workers in general have been long treated like second-class citizens. Has that changed at all in the legal system?
No, not at all. And it's a stereotype. I call it a stereotype because that's what it is. It is a stereotype. For anyone who reads their history books, they know that prostitution is the oldest profession as far back as documentation of human beings go. But unfortunately, there are still various different reasons why people choose or want sexuality and sex to be in a brown box in the corner of a room covered with a blanket where no one is there to see it or hear it, whether it be for religious notions that have been put into their head, or standards of civility or whatever moral ground they seem to stand on. But the fact is again, these are the same people that pretend that they themselves haven't gone over to one of the big tube sites to go check out some porn or subscribe to their favorite adult magazine, and frankly, I consider them to be complete hypocrites. I think that for the most part, when you talk about politicians who are the ones making laws that have generally hurt sex workers, when you look at laws like FOSTA and SESTA, did the people behind the law, did they actually go? Did they stop? And did they go talk to sex workers on the ground and talk to them before they did this? No, of course not, because they know better. Even though they have no actual specific knowledge, I would challenge any of those politicians to spend a week in this business and see what their view was afterwards. But that's just a pipe dream, because as you and I know, that's of course that wouldn't happen, because that would, God forbid, they get their fingers dirty, so to speak.
When a performer, if someone approaches you for a legal matter, do you have like an outline for yourself of specific points maybe you need to see whether this court case is worth pursuing? Never.
One thing about me, and that I've always focused on in my career, is that everyone has a story, everyone has something to tell, and no two cases are unique. Contrary to how people want to just say, oh well, one sex worker is the same as another one. That's just a stereotype. Every person who comes to me has a story to tell. They need to be listened to. Their facts have to be analyzed based on those facts, based on their life, based on the situation that they're in. So I don't go through like a list and go through a series of questions. Every client that I talk to, when they call me, they always know that after that first conversation that I'm always there for them. And they need that, because a proper attorney-client relationship is a relationship of trust. It's one of the oldest, most soundest confidential relationships that we have in our society. And so it's important to me that every person, whatever facet of the business they're in, whether they're a website operator, a producer, behind the camera, in front of the camera, whatever they are, they need to be able to come to their lawyer and say, hey, I need to come to a safe place where I know I've got someone looking out for me and is not going to look at me based on how some of society might view me as a sex worker. And so I don't do like a list or questions or anything like that. I listen that's what I had a law professor years ago said, just shut up and open your ears and listen. It's incredible how much better of a case you can have, and what a better job you can do for your client just by listening versus talking.
You recently did a seminar on legal tips to become a successful influencer. What is an influencer in the first place?
That's a very good question, because I myself ask that all the time. The definition kind of is like one of those things that are like kind of rolling, because
Right.
Now basically it's really anybody who has a presence on social media and is trying to captivate an audience to whatever it is, to listen to them, to join them, to whatever. The word influencer came from the fact that they're watching a person, and that person is trying to influence you in an opinion or to a view or what have you. But you can I mean, frankly, you have celebrities left and right that are influencers. You have sex workers that are influencers. You have people that work in the adult industry that are influencers. To me, an influencer is truly anyone that has a message, that has something that they want to send out to the world, that they want the world to hear. And so they use a platform, oftentimes social media, sometimes another one, to get that message out. That's what I really look at it as. Social media influencers, one of the biggest things that they forget is right from the start, they have to remember that it is a business. It is a business. It is not just for fun. And so being that it's a business, you have to be a responsible business owner. You have to set up a company. You need to make sure that the people you're working with are bound to non-disclosure agreements. You need to take precautions to protect your own safety. You need to make sure that you're actually paying your taxes and not only paying your taxes, but using responsible financial methods by use of an accountant to actually minimize taxes while at the same time complying with applicable tax law. It's no different than any other business. And of course, influencers also need to realize that when they're on platforms, and this is a big one, this is something that drives me nuts. It just drives me crazy, Dominic, is that, people come to me and they say, hey, I got thrown off of Twitter. I got thrown off of Facebook. Let's sue. My First Amendment rights have been violated. And I say, what government is in charge of Twitter, Facebook? They are private companies. When you go on Twitter, when you go on Facebook, when you initially sign up, you sign a very long terms of use. I know these terms of use because for many sites out there, I've written them and I know what's in there. And what it is a binding contract in between that person and the platform. And the platform has any right whatsoever to terminate you at any point for whatever reason they want. You don't get to come back later and say that somehow your rights were violated or you had a First Amendment claim. That's just silliness and nonsense, which is why I also tell social media influencers, remember, there's no insurance policy that you can buy. So you can't go out and it's not like a life insurance policy where you can buy a social media insurance policy. You're responsible for your own social media, and that's your gold. Your followers, your posts, that's your gold. You should be backing up your social media on a weekly basis. You should be having a separate database where you maintain alternate information for your users. So say, for example, one day, one of the big platforms, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, does knock you off, you have another way to reach your customers. If you've worked for years to build up that customer and that follower base, and you're not protecting it and treating it like an asset, it's just it's crazy. Just shooting yourself in the foot, just gambling.
Two questions I have there. The first question is, I've been kicked off of YouTube and Facebook for material I'd posted literally 5 years before, that
Okay.
5 years later violated some kind of
Whatever.
Is that in the contract?
Yeah, it is. And unfortunately, even though the years have passed later, all they've got to do is determine in their own discretion that you have somehow violated their terms, whatever they may be. They have every right to turn around and throw you off. And one thing that drives me crazy, Dominic, and this is something that we've noticed in this new social media crazed word, is that's what's happening. A lot of times now, like you see it a lot with like sports coaches, they're whatever, they get hired and someone pulls a clip of them from 25 years ago.
Right.
And then, they're fired, they're thrown off the platform, they can't come back. And they're like, what are you talking about? I didn't even know this video was out there. But unfortunately, these platforms are in full control. That is, if you're not happy with it, you're more than welcome to go out and start your own social media platform where you make the rules.
Have you found in your legal cases or maybe research, more of those situations are from people who have a personal issue with somebody else and they bitch enough and get them kicked off? Mm-hmm. Or is there actual someplace where they violated terms of the agreement?
No, it's a combination. I mean, look, we've seen in the last, here we are doing this interview today on January 25th. We're only, days past of what was an inauguration that removed a president that was thrown off social media. And now we have a new president that is, in office that has also said that he believes that Section 230 should be modified or eliminated because of his problems with Facebook and the way they treated his son and what have you. So it's a combination. It's a combination. I think though what happens is that when public outcry really starts, what people do is they band together and they start attacking people's sponsors, where the money's coming from, and say, how can you support this? How can you support this? I'm not going to support you if you continue. They then go to the platform and say, hey, we're getting all this heat. If you want us to keep sponsoring your platform or being an advertiser or what have you, you need to get rid of these guys. So there's a lot of pressure. It's the same thing that really went on with TV talk shows in the 80s, and even throughout history we've seen it. If you put enough pressure on someone that you don't like, I mean, history in the past doesn't seem to forget. It doesn't seem to care what year it is or when you did something.
What is a brand for people who don't understand?
Well, so that's a great question. So if you look at my cool little background I put up here, so one of my brands, for example, that I go by is, I've created Adult.Law. That I would actually say is one of my brands that I have. I have myadultattorney.com is a brand of mine. Pepsi is a brand. Coke is a brand. If a person, one thing that happens for talent often, or workers or performers, that they oftentimes don't understand, is that in order to go and actually get trademark rights, it's not just by using a name, but they have to have established an actual brand for it. So, if you look at some of the historical huge names in the adult entertainment industry, they associated everything with their brand. Jenna Jameson did it, and the list goes on and on and on and on. But there's a huge difference. So if I just said tomorrow, okay, I'm Corey Silverstein, I'm going to go and trademark my name, my trademark will probably be denied because it's not really a brand. I'm not really holding out Corey Silverstein as a business other than my name, and people oftentimes get that wrong.
And does your brand have to be copyrighted and legal, whatever the correct legal way to say that is, for it to be yours?
No, it doesn't. And that's another mistake that people make. There are certain legal advantages to being able to go out and actually register a trademark. And part of that gives you the ability to sue, to go after, to enforce it. But you still have certain what are known as common law rights to certain intellectual property. But all of that are very complex intellectual property analysis that have to be done on a case-by-case situation. It's going to differ. People always ask me that. They like, hey, what's the general answer to that? There isn't a general answer, because it's going to specifically depend on what's going on in that person's life, what's going on with that person's brand, mark, etc. So you can really figure out what rights they have, what they don't have, and what they should be filing.
Is there a difference between a mainstream brand, Coca-Cola, versus an adult performer's brand, Judy Smith, on a legal basis?
Yes, because it's not a stupid question. It's actually a very good question, and it would be one of those questions that we'd probably have to have like a full-blown lesson on in trademark and intellectual property law. They're two completely different things. And what it really comes down to is whether or not, if you're applying for a trademark, the trademark office will actually determine that you've established that you are in fact using something as a brand. And there's a very clear legal distinction. So that is not a stupid question. And why I again tell everyone, when they're looking for trademark advice, don't just go to Wikipedia and use that as your end-all be-all source for gathering information, because that's you should always talk to a professional, someone who's familiar with it and can actually give you a professional and an educated opinion.
A girl walks into an agent's office to get in the adult industry.
Mm-hmm.
She agrees to do the business. They come up with the stage name Judy Smith for sake of discussion.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing the agent does is get the domains, get everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Judy Smith starts becoming popular, and she wants to register all that stuff, and she finds out the agent has already done it.
Mm-hmm.
Does she have any legal recourse to get it back?
It depends. And what it's going to go down to is, remember when you started the example with, she walks in and she signs something. And so What it's going to come down to is what is in that paperwork. And so what I always tell people is that I don't care who you're working with. I don't care if it's the biggest agent in the world. I don't care if it's the smallest agent in the world. It doesn't matter to me. The fact is that anytime someone takes a piece of paper and sticks it in front of your face and says, here, you need to sign this, you don't just sign it. You read it. And if you don't understand any part of it, then you call me or you call another lawyer, and that lawyer will explain it to you so that you fully understand what your rights are. that's where the biggest mistake is. The biggest mistake are what I call predatory practices. Predatory practices are some of these quote unquote agents who frankly aren't much of agents. They're just, I don't know what to call them, but they stick a pad of paper in front of them and say, oh, well, you're not getting your money until you sign this. And that's not how to do business. And that is not what the gross portion of this industry is. And frankly, if you're a performer out there and that's the sort of person you meet, run away, don't work with them again. Go find a reputable agent. Now with the advances of social media and platforms like mine, like Adult.Law, you can always come and say, hey, I need an opinion. I need to vet this person. What's the story on this guy? You know, and it's something that you absolutely have to do before ever signing your name to anything.
And I did a little bit of research on it, but a legitimate agent, are they not supposed to be involved with anyone that's involved in, is it illegal practices? Is it drugs?
It differs from state to state. Different states have different rules when it comes to being an actual true agent, where you actually go and you set up an agency and get the appropriate licenses. In some states, actually, you can be a convicted felon and still get your license. It really depends from state to state. So what you have to do is when you look at what state your agent's licensed in, make sure you actually know what the rules are for that too, because they very well could be a licensed agent, but have done, you know, a considerable amount of prison time earlier in their lives for, you know, who knows what.
And if the law in California, for sake of discussion, says you may not be involved with someone who's in prostitution or drugs, and that agent has another client who is, how does that impact you?
It's a mess, and frankly, it's one of the reasons why you see so many of these disputes between agents and performers, and it's a reason why, as of late, you've seen so many of these larger agencies. You're seeing their names in the news. We're not going to mention any on the show, but they're being dragged into investigations. They're being charged with crimes. They're being sued because what's happened is there's pushback now, and frankly, it's because of social media, because people can talk in groups about these agencies. And so information that those agencies historically didn't allow to get out is now getting out. And so there's more attention from law enforcement and more attention from civil lawyers, as it should be, because again, if I don't have any issue with agencies at all. I don't want anyone to think that starting an agency isn't a very good service in this business, because frankly it is. I've got a problem with people who start agencies to use them as a weapon to abuse individuals getting into this industry. I have a problem with that, big problem with that.
Comes up when these types of situations comes up with lawyers, or not lawyers, I'm sorry, agents and performers, is that if you try and go after your agent, they're going to dig into your background or your possible work issues and use them against you.
Yeah, that's when you come. That's when you come to me. If you have an agent that tries that sort of bullshit or that sort of scare tactic, that's when you come to me. There's no place for someone like that in this industry, and I'll be damn sure to make sure that person understands that going forward.